Yeah, we're ready to begin. Welcome everybody to our press conference. Thank you very much for coming today. We are the Education, Communication, Outreach Stakeholders Community, or ECOS community for short. My name is Felipe Fontesilla. I will be moderating the conference today. I come from Chile, the country where COP25 will be hosted this December. We expect Chile to greatly advance its work on Action for Climate Empowerment, ACE, and the development of its plan to integrate climate change education into national curricula. Our first panelist today is Mark McCaffrey, one of two ECOS focal points, who is based in Hungary. So my first question is, Mark, you have been working with ECOS from the very beginning. Could you give a brief history of ECOS and why it exists and why it is important?
I'd be happy to. So 100 years ago, climate scientists were informing the world that if we kept burning fossil fuels, the temperature of the Earth could rise fairly significantly. And 60 years ago, climate educators started talking about how the fact was, in the late 1950s, we were already burning fossil fuels at a tremendous rate. And if it continued, the possibility of melting ice caps, melting snow, and the raising of sea levels and altering of ecosystems was very likely. 25 years ago, or just over 25 years ago, the nations of the world agreed that climate change was a big problem and that something should be done about it. And they included in Article 6 of the original convention the idea that education and training, public engagement, public participation in developing adequate responses to climate change should be a priority. 10 years ago, I was working in the United States on climate literacy and was involved with developing a program called CLEAN, the Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network. And it was one of the first of a series of programs funded by the US government that over the past 10 years has spent over $200 million on climate education work. And a lot of it is work that has been peer-reviewed and is in journals that describe some of the best practices that have emerged out of this 10 years of research. 4 years ago, I was able to attend the Bonn Climate Conference, the same one that we are here at today, and there was a dialogue around what we now call ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment, and I was the work that the Secretariat has been doing, that countries around the world are doing to move climate education and all these related topics forward. But there was also a sense that much more needed to be done. And at COP21 in Paris, I met Dr. Muriel Polzer, who's with the International Association for the Advancement of Innovation for Global Solutions. And he suggested to me that maybe there could be a constituency that we could recommend related to education, communication, and outreach. And so I proposed to the Secretariat that we establish such a constituency. And then just before the Marrakesh COP, we got the green light to have a community that we now call ECOS, Education, Communication, and Outreach Stakeholders. So over the past couple of years, we've been around now 2.5 years, ECOS has really started to build its capacity, and I'm really excited to be here today with this incredible team of folks from around the world, and there's other people that are involved with ECOS who are not here today. But we'd like to just give you a bit of an overview of all the things that we've already been doing and look forward to the future of how we can amplify action for climate empowerment.
Thank you very much, Mark. So our second panelist is Laura Weiland, or Weiland, the director of the Sustainable Living Center at the Omega Institute in upstate New York. Laura, I know that you have been very involved in the organizational structures and logistics for the ECOS community in recent months. Given your background, can you tell us more about how this community is growing?
Yes, thank you, Felipe. So it's wonderful to be here with you all, and our coordination team is really growing, and it's starting with the International Association for Advancement on Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, or IAAI. has been a partner, as Mark said, with ECOS since the beginning, and many of us are actually part of, have been working with the GLOCHA Action Now campaign as well. And then we all represent different organizations and institutions, networks that bring our organizational capacity to ECOS. And through my work with the Omega Institute and in partnership with Project Drawdown, we've been doing a lot of regional and national and global organizing around climate literacy and action, and with a strong focus of bringing climate solutions approach to education into schools. And what really gives me a lot of hope is the many talented and caring people that are working on climate education and the regional organizing, from formal education to museums and libraries. We're seeing, government partners and many non-governmental partners. So there's a huge growing number of organizations and partners coming together. And we have many of these groups that are represented and involved in ECOS, both in the steering group as well as the wider community. So within our team, there's a lot of knowledge and experience. There's many people within the coordinating team that have been coming to these UN conferences for many years and are helping us all to learn more about it. We also have daily meetings that happen during these conferences to help all of us understand how to better participate and understand what's going on. And we've been attending the ACE dialogues. And as we leave here together throughout the year, we're really looking at strengthening our capacity as a network and really supporting the innovative and creation of top-down and bottom-up national and subnational climate education strategies as fast as we possibly can. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Now, our third panelist today is Danae Espinosa. Based in Mexico, part of the general coordination of the Latin American and Caribbean Youth Climate Movement, or CLICT for its name in Spanish. Danae, how do you see the work of ECOS in addressing intergenerational equity in the context of ACE?
Thank you very much. Well, in the intergenerational equity was a real challenge during COP25. In fact, many young people was working on it because it was in danger to be out of the Paris Agreement. We couldn't put it inside in another article, etc., but it's in the preamble of the Paris Agreement, so that is successful, as well as gender, by the way. But, well, at the end, everything is contained in the Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, so we were happy with that decision. And I would like to read just a little bit about what I wrote. The term of intergenerational equity is part of the preamble of the Paris Agreement. Many stakeholders worked hard during COP21 so that it will be not lost. To talk about intergenerational equity is about climate justice. It is to ensure actions carried out of the eradication of poverty, the reduction of inequality, and turning the tide on climate change. I would like to mention that climate justice is support the right to development. That emphasizes the interdependence of all people and the earth and the need for a development-first approach to climate action specifically, particularly in the Global South, where the developing countries and least developed countries are concentrated. ACE is related to intergenerational equity since its pillars of action, such as education, access to information, and public participation, are very focused on achieving climate justice through present and future generations. That's it.
Thank you very much, Danae. Our fourth panelist is Tim. Timothy Damon from the United States, who is founder and president of the Global Youth Development Institute. Tim, where is ECOS right now from this subsidiary bodies conference? How should we proceed in the coming year towards COP25 and the SB conference next year?
Well, gracias, Felipe, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So I have the pleasure of giving you some updates on where do we need to go over the next year based off of what's happened here at the UN Climate Conference. So the big topic of discussion between governments was preparing the methodology by which they're going to review the work they've done over the past 8 years through what they call the Doha Work Program. And that's now concluding next year in 2020. And so it's a very big question of what is going to come after that, because as we have all these related topics of how are we going to increase the ambition of the NDCs, how are we going to do the global stocktake, there's so many things. This question of how do we leverage education, communication, and outreach, all of the Action for Climate Empowerment activities, what will that new framework look like after this work program from the past 8 years has run out? And that's really where we see a strong role for ECOS to be this network of networks, this group of experts who have both the theoretical and strategic sense, but also the on-the-ground practical implementing sense of doing climate change education and outreach to really feed into that final review so that as governments move ahead, they have the best, most robust framework possible. And to make sure that, since not all of the governments here are putting as much priority on this whole education for climate change area, to make sure that we in civil society and especially young people keep pushing on that. It's thanks to young people that we actually had Article 12 of the Paris Agreement on education, in addition to young people pushing for intergenerational equity, as my colleague Danai mentioned. So that's going to be one big area, and you'll want to, so how are you going to do that? Well, you can, my colleague Saffron will be telling you how to join in with ECOS and next steps, but join ECOS. You can make submissions to the framework convention here from your organizations. That needs to be done by February 15th of 2020, so still some time, but the earlier we can start working on that, the better. We can be doing more research, developing more indicators. There's very many things to do and have a much longer strategic discussion about this than what we are here, and we invite everyone to join into that discussion. But then the other key point from this is, yes, all of this is going on here between governments, and we as civil society, do our best to interject into that. But it's also clear from the negotiations here that this intergovernmental process is slow, all right? I mean, Mark was mentioning the urgency, the IPCC report mentions the urgency, and so we as civil society organizations really need to drive forward on this. Let's identify what we think everyone should be doing to advance education for climate change, outreach, et cetera. And so then by the time we come back next June here to Bonn, where the governments will do that process I was just describing, we'll actually have demonstrated to them the way forward. And that's really what personally draws me here into ECOS, is I see that we're building that, and it's very exciting, and it's going to make the big difference for 2020 to 2030. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yeah, that's exciting. So our next panelist is Abby Rusky from the United States Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development, and she's a specialist in capacity building. So Abby, considering your experience with capacity building, what can you tell us about education, communication, outreach capacity? What can you tell us about education, communication, outreach capacities in place globally? What are the gaps?
Great, thanks, Felipe. And it's an honor to join this intergenerational panel and community of ECOS and to be here at this climate summit. And I'd like to thank Dr. Greg Walker and the International Environmental Communications Association for hosting me here. I don't know if you all are realize that there are 2.5 billion students and educators around the world. So if you think about that, that's 1 in 3 of the population of the planet. There's a lot of potential there, and as we look at what's taken place here in this past week, there's a lot of work and groundwork that has been laid in order to realize a full-scale implementation of education, communications, and outreach worldwide. This started with the signing of the world's education ministers at the Tbilisi Declaration and Belgrade Charter in 1976 and 1977. That formed the goals of environmental education and really launched a concerted effort to build capacity for lifelong learning and action in light of the Earth's limits to its carrying capacity. Now we fast forward 32 years, And we are not only in a climate emergency, but we have a progress at every scale that has taken place that links the formal and informal environmental sustainability and climate learning programs, curriculum, teacher and faculty, professional development, and assessment across the planet. So, for example, there are national and subnational environmental sustainability and climate literacy plans in place in many places around the globe. There are also nationally and regionally networked organizations such as the North American Association for Environmental Education, the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development, the Earth Day Network, ECOS schools, and many, many more. There are also clearinghouses and resources exchanges and technology tools that are now available today that are coming online that are rapidly being deployed toward this issue around the country. And there are model programs like Washington State's Climb Time project, which has integrated climate literacy and learning into K-12 schools across the state of Washington as we speak. But the most important thing, I think, that we want to underscore in terms of the potential of this is what Laura touched on, and that is that across this planet, there are teachers, there are parents, there are business leaders, governmental employees, people in all sectors of civil society that are really taking this on themselves, and they need the support of a networked, brokered center that can bring all efforts together and leverage them to the great impact that we need to make through education, communications, and outreach. And then finally, I just want to mention the workforce development trend that's taking place. We will not be able to get this done through technology, business, and finance alone. We will need to train up a lot of people in order to be able to build and maintain the green technology systems that need to come online in time. Last of all, I just want to mention in terms of capacity, student and the student movement. And the life force that is in students is something that it's the we generation. It's time for all of us to be with and get behind our students, and I see them as the greatest force for change and the engine of this work. I want to mention just a few gaps, just three. Not all countries, as it turns out, have an ACE focal point. We'd like to see that gap closed. No country has a climate ECOS network in place yet. We also need those at the state and local level. And yet, there's not yet a staffed ECOS global center to network, broker resources, and leverage best practices, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you, Felipe, and thank you, panel. That's my conclusion of my
Thank you very much,
comments.
Abby.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very inspiring, although there is still work to do. Our next panelist is Safran Minar from Sri Lanka, the Director for Development and Communications with Earth Lanka. Safran, could you tell us what are the next steps for ECOS and how can people get involved?
Thank you, Felipe, and hello everyone. Safran from Sri Lanka. I mean, just to echo and see how Timothy's on the submission process we would like to also emphasize how it is important that everyone has to be part of the whole process, and the deadline, as you all know, make sure that you are submitting for the process. And before to go into the details of, I just wanted to say, Abhi just mentioned that there are nearly 2.5 billion people who are educators, but at the same time, nearly 759 million people don't have access to education. So ECOS is a platform that could also bridge these two people together, where we see more effectiveness, and as clearly mentioned by Abhi as well, in local community, in the regional level, how we engage, especially the young people, and also to have that intergenerational dialogue. And this has to be solved, and that's one of the critical problem. And in ECOS, if it is really important to see how school children and how we are trying to engage school children, high school, and also the universities who are on the preliminary stages of their studies to engage them into the whole process. And as you all know, one of the things that you can also join us is that through to writing to us. We have a focal point. We have Mark and Victor from two focal points, and the details are available on the press release that you must have received it. And also, if you'd like to see our activities, especially on the engagement that we have, please do reach out and see out at our Twitter and Facebook. And our website. So Twitter goes as @ClimateECOS, so you can check on the Twitter and what is our engagement, and we can get daily updates as well. And of course, we will be in a bigger platform, and to see how more broader engagement will happen in Chile in COP25 in December. Hopefully, let's engage and see how we can bridge this two gaps that I just, like Abhi said, and to reach how much of level of people that we could within the time that we have. Of course, it's going to be going beyond what we could and how far we could achieve and everything. And thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Safran. Before we move on to the next part, I would like to make a clarification. In the slide says Felipe Fontecilla Gutierrez, Chile COP25. I am not here representing COP25, although I will be attending. I am here with my University College of the Atlantic, so I just want to make that clear so that there are no confusions. Now that we have a better idea of what ECOS is, what it's doing, what is important, and how can you get involved, I would like to open the floor to our audience for any questions. We still have about 10 minutes, so. So if there are no questions and everything is clear, I would like to thank you again for coming to our... Oh, we do have a question. Hold on a second.
Hello, everybody. My name is Miroslav Polca. I'm with the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges. I'm one of the founding members of ECOS. But my question would be, do you have any concrete plans also for resource mobilization? Because I can imagine that this is an important topic.
Indeed, this is a crucial topic because, as we know, the efforts to try to deploy technology especially to developing countries like through the Green Climate Fund have really struggled to get funding for their efforts. And likewise, we did a survey of ECOS members and some of our stakeholders last year and found that the #1 challenge that people faced was financial support for their efforts. This is a kind of a perennial problem that goes back many years, and if not decades. And so that's one of our priorities. You know, it's a big challenge. I think that the philanthropic community, which is increasingly focused on climate since they realize finally that this is such a #1 priority. If we don't deal with climate change, then all these other problems will only get worse. So I think the philanthropic community is starting to wake up to the importance of climate education broadly defined. So not just what happens in classrooms, but elsewhere in terms of engaging the public, informing the public, and so forth. So we do have sort of a grand vision, but we have to start where we are, which is the fact that we're building our own capacity. I think, you know, sometimes I've used the metaphor of if we had the funding for one nuclear submarine, we could change every community in the world, basically, and have like a climate literacy learning center and find ways of helping meet the needs of the local communities while providing services that they might desperately need, whether it's dealing with heat waves and extreme events, or providing clean drinking water and so forth. So I think there's many things that can be done, and we need to paint the clear vision of what's possible and how methodically and strategically we can approach that.
Thank you very much for your questions and great answer. We have one more question and we have a little bit of time, so please.
Greg Walker from Oregon State University, MeatEaters Beyond Borders, and the International Environmental Communication Association. Appreciate all of you being here today, sharing your ideas. A number of you mentioned the connection between ECOS and Action for Climate Empowerment. And as we know, Action for Climate Empowerment emphasizes 6 areas of work: education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to information, and international cooperation. Do you see ECOS working with all 6 of those areas, or are some of the areas of ACE more central to what you see as the ECOS mission? Thank you.
Good question.
I mean, I think that we can help with all of them, and obviously many of us come from an education background, and developing basic literacy is crucial. But at the same time, 3 of those 6 relate to public information, public access to information, and public awareness, as well as public participation in developing adequate responses to climate change. So I think those all also overlap with climate education. Another one of the key elements of that is international cooperation and collaboration. And I think that there's a lot we can do to help build with the Secretariat, if possible, sort of an ACE network, if you will, and expand the great work that they're doing in other parts of the UN ecosystem, like CC Learn is doing great work out of UNITAR, and obviously UNESCO and many other parts of UN are doing fantastic work that we can hopefully build on and support.
Yeah, if any other of our panelists would like to answer that question as well?
Yeah, I would like to add that I agree with that. I think that's a completely overlapping mission and partnership that we would help to grow with the Secretariat here, as well as, grow out in the world, and so into civil society and with the universities and schools and government units and businesses and so many others that are doing this work. We have yet to really show the power of what we have access to. And along the lines of resources and access to resources, we can think about that in a lot of different ways. One of the ways is access of people who are motivated to do this to curriculum and teacher training resources. The other is financial resources. But either way you look at it, what we're about, I believe, is raising the profile and priorities of those who have access to policy and financial resources of education, communications, and outreach. Because if we don't do that, I personally believe, and I think the people across this panel believe, that we will not move the needle quick enough to curb the just worst effects of climate change. So I think that it really is all of that, and it's all hands on deck time.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you very much for addressing that question. If there are any more remarks, if you can make it short, because we have just a few minutes to begin.
I just wanted to say that it's been amazing to be here in Bonn when we're here at these international conferences like the UN. We've had access to that question about, whether we're addressing all 6. As we meet incredible people both here and in between these sessions, our steering committee is growing and more expertise is coming in, and it's really allowing us to have representation from all over the world. And if anybody wants to be part of this with us, we will be posting on the Facebook and as well as on the website information about how you can tell us who you are and how you'd like to be involved, and let's join up efforts.
Awesome. So on that note, on the join our efforts, we're going to end this press conference. Thank you very much to our wonderful audience for being here. I would like to thank specifically Adriana Valenzuela for being with us from the Secretariat. A pleasure and an honor to have you with us. Thank you to all of our panelists, or very diverse panel here, and the UNFCCC for hosting this press conference. If you have any more questions, feel free to talk to any of us, any of the panelists. For those watching us online at home, check our website on the presentation and send us an email. We'll be happy to connect. And we'll see you all, hopefully, at my home country, Chile, during COP25. So thank you very much.